Hello everyone, this is Jotto and welcome to the Hearthstone Weekly Show. Now for this episode I have another deck tech. I'm doing two of these in a row. So last week, as some of you may know, I was tinkering around with a taunt druid that I called BK Buffet. Well, the second version, there was an original. But anyway, so I don't actually think that list is perfect yet, and I could do a lot more work on it. However, when the next wing of VRM came out, there was a certain card in that wing called Imp Gang Boss, and so I thought, well, let's see if we can come up with another deck that's particularly good in the metagame. So I had a look at Zoo, and I was thinking, alright, so what's going to be popular this week? Probably mages. I don't see those going anywhere. Zoo's going to come back, maybe some Demon Lock, and probably some Druid. So, well, I mean, Druid's always popular. So I was thinking, just use the philosophy of, if you want to beat a deck, be slightly slower or a lot faster. Basically, the way that works is that if you're a lot faster, you kill them before they can react and or stabilize. And if you're slightly slower, you have bigger value plays than they do, so you win the majority of the time. So what I did was I made a Zoo deck with a slightly higher curve than normal. So I called it Big Zoo. It's not Demon Zoo or anything like that, which is even slower. But this is just a Zoo deck running a few extra 3-drops and a few extra higher curve cards, which give you the edge against other aggro decks because you have better value plays than they do. But anyway, without further ado, let's get started with the deck list. One power forming, not two. Two power formings was too clunky. I tried it out. It just didn't really work. I've been pretty happy with one though. At the moment, I've taken this to rank 3. It's what I'm going to try and grind to Legend with. And I got to rank 5 with 2 power formings, and they just kept drawing dead, so I got rid of one. 2 Abusive Sergeants, pretty self-explanatory, for Haunted Creepers, Eggs, and just good for trading. Flame Imp, Voidwalker, pretty much the best 1-drops you can play. Only 6 1-drops in this deck. Yes, that is a little bit of a shortcoming. I did try some Argent Squires. They just didn't work out. And a lot of other decks have been running Leprognomes, which I really didn't like when I tried. So only running the 6 1-drops. Although you do go second half the time, so that negates the need for that many 1-drops. So anyway, on to more core Zoo cards. Yeah, we'll get to some of the tech cards later. Direwolf Alpha, pretty much same as Abusive Sergeant. In terms of role, you get to buff some of your tokens from Haunted Creepers and Nerubian Eggs. And it acts as an enabler for Nerubian Egg, where you can attack and kill your own Nerubian Egg and get a 4/4. So, Direwolf Alpha is just an enabler. Haunted Creeper, solid 2-drop. Iron Beak Owl, yes, my channel mascot showing up in this one. So, this is a more recent addition. I added this earlier today, actually. And the reason for it was because I was running into a ton of Hunters and other Zoo decks, to the point where Iron Beak Owl was basically just a 2-1 that kills something when you silence. In the case of Nerubian Egg, or if it's Mad Scientist, that's a big deal. Or in the case of Leprognomes, sometimes saves you and things like that. So the Iron Beak Owl as a 1-off has been very strong. Did try 2 briefly. The problem is when you draw 2 of them, and it's pretty miserable when you don't have anything else to play. So I like the 1. It also helps against taunts, although that wasn't much of an issue for this deck in general because you're running a higher curve and more ways of smashing through taunts. Knife Juggler, probably the best 2-drop in the deck. Yes, over Nerubian Egg, Haunted Creeper and such. Knife Juggler does ridiculous things. You've got Implosion, you've got Imp Gang Boss, Harvest Golem, Nerubian Egg, Haunted Creeper. These all generate tokens. A good strategy, actually, for turn 1, turn 2, going second against an aggro deck, if you can play Haunted Creeper on turn 1, instead of Knife Juggler. You can coin out Haunted Creeper, and then on turn 2 play Knife Juggler and trade your Haunted Creeper and kill his 2-drop. Something which, I mean, it can go really badly for you, obviously, where it's the 1-4 usually. Just doesn't work out. However, it does allow you to get some pretty disgusting trades for the first half of a Haunted Creeper. It also works absurdly well with Imp Gang Boss and Implosion, and really badly against Imp Gang Boss. That's kind of amusing, but we'll get to that when we get to that particular card. Nerubian Egg, your anti-AoE, but also just a 4/4 for basically 2 mana and an enabler, which can come as cheap as Abusive Sergeant or Power Forming. Power Forming on Nerubian Egg is utterly disgusting. you get a 4 attack egg that will probably kill something, then you get a 4/4. So power bombing your Rubian egg is really ridiculous. Now this is where things get a bit more interesting in terms of curve. So when Zoo was a thing before BRM, which it wasn't really in GVG, but before that, Harvest Golem was the 3-drop of choice, and you only ran Harvest Golem because you needed a 3-drop, and it was just a value 3-drop. So when BRM came out, people were like, Imp Gang Boss, we don't need Harvest Golem anymore. It's actually astonishing. I played against a large amount of Zoo decks, and I have not seen a Harvest Golem. I don't think I've seen a Harvest Golem, period, from a Zoo deck, actually. So they've all replaced it with Imp Gang Boss, which is better than Harvest Golem by a substantial margin. However, Harvest Golem is still good in the current metagame, so I just decided to keep Harvest Golem in there. It makes the deck slightly slower. You get to get away with a little bit of a greedier starting hand going second, especially. You get to coin out 3-drops, which is very good, because going second is a pretty big disadvantage in the mirror match or against other aggro decks generally. So the 3-drops do help that out. The 3-drops just help you out in terms of stabilizing. As I said, Imp Gang Boss is better than Harvest Golem in pretty much every way. It's just absurd. The only time Imp Gang Boss is worse is actually against things like Swipe, because it kills the token as it summons it, which is a bug apparently. But at the moment, Harvest Golem is only better against AoE than Imp Gang Boss. But the EGB, as I'm calling him, has been disgusting. He's been really good. One of the single best 3-drops in the game, in my opinion. He just trades so well. It's really astonishing. Generally, he'll make 2 imps. Sometimes he makes 1. Most of the time he makes 2, and I've got 4 imps out of Imp Gang Boss, and that's just ridiculous. Playing it against an enemy Knife Juggler is hilarious. Because what will happen is a Knife Juggler trigger will hit the Imp Gang Boss, summon a 1/1, which absorbs triggers. So this Imp Gang Boss can absorb 8 Knife Juggler hits, which is just absurd. And if it keeps hitting the boss instead of the imps, you just build a board. So he's very, very good against Knife Juggler, very good with Knife Juggler. Similar principle to Haunted Creeper. You can play Imp Gang Boss and turn 4, go Knife Juggler, something else, trade into something, you get an imp, get a trigger. So the boss has been very, very good and definitely worth playing the 2 of. Although in my case, I haven't replaced Harvest Golem, I did it in addition. Implosion, the worst pun in the game, I guess, besides Sea Giant's flavor text. But anyway, Implosion is both one of my favorite cards in the game and one of my least favorite cards in the game as far as Warlock is concerned. It does something completely unique that nothing else in this deck can compare to, which is a burn spell that builds your board. Everything else is a buff of some kind, whereas this is just a straight up kill a guy with nothing on the board and you get a bunch of imps. It lets you get on the board when you have nothing, while getting ahead of the board. It's kind of like Fire Elemental for Zoo. It's kind of weird. The reason I hate this card sometimes is because the amount of games that have been decided by imp rolls is just ridiculous. If it always dealt 3, I think it might be my favorite Warlock card. Probably by far, actually. It'd be my favorite Warlock card, and it would be like my top 5 favorite class cards, because I love the design. But whenever you get 4, you don't really lose those games, unless they have AoE, and when you get 2, it's back-breaking sometimes. The worst thing about Implosion is that it's an absurdly powerful card when it works. So in the mirror match, sometimes both players will play 2, and whoever gets higher rolls wins. Because dealing with Implosion tokens is very difficult for Zoo if they don't have Knife Juggler. So that's a bit annoying about how good the card is. But to be fair, GVG cards in general are very random, and this is one of them. The other one is Dr. Boom, which we'll get to later, which everyone knows. Is very RNG based, but Implosion is only 3 outcomes as opposed to Dr. Boom's crazy amount. So Implosion, very, very good card, although a bit frustrating to play with sometimes. Dark Iron Dwarf. Now, this used to be a 2 of, and if it wasn't for all the secret classes, this would be a 2 of. Now, the reason it's a 1 of is because I needed to cut something for Kez and Mystic, and it just seemed like the most logical choice, because you need 2 defenders and you need 2 Implosions. Didn't really want to up the curve that much more than I already have either. So, Dark Iron Dwarf basically functions as a abusive sergeant with a big body attached. 4/4 is surprisingly large in this deck, and with all the buffs running around, it will trade into almost anything on the next turn, or just deal a bunch of damage to their face. So really like the Dark Iron. In terms of effect, he's worse than Abusive, but the body does make up for that in spades. So good one of, I would run 2, but Kezan Mystic is necessary in the current metagame. Speaking of Kezan Mystic, yeah, this was a card which wasn't in the original deck, and I added very quickly, as I've been finding that Kezan makes it into every single deck I make at the moment, because there's something ridiculous, like 50% of the ladder is either Mage or Hunter. I'm not even exaggerating that by much. It really is about 50%. So you need Kezan right now. He wins so many games on his own. I have had face hunters concede where I've stolen the explosive. They haven't had their own Kezan to steal it back, and it wipes their board and they can't win. So Kezan is extremely good, or Kezan, or however you say it, is extremely good in the current metagame, and I would highly recommend playing it in pretty much every deck. The last 4-drop is Defender of Argus. Or Carrot of Argus, technically, since he defends himself with other people. But Defender of Argus is the big buffs which let you trade into things. It lets you get outs and taunts, which is actually incredibly useful in a lot of matchups. And this card comes into its own, well, I mean, it's good in every matchup, but it comes into its own against Hunter. And this is just a PSA for Hunter players. Stop taking everything in Zoo down to 2 health. I think I've been keeping a tally, and I'm up to 11 games against Hunters that I've just randomly won with Defenders. Like, not this season, but just in general. Where you just play Defender, buff your guys out of 2 HP, and kill them because they were expecting their explosive to do it. Just stop doing that. And it's not like they don't have a choice, it's just greed. So if you're playing Face Hunter, especially, because you probably have 2 explosives in that deck, don't do that. It just blows you out beyond belief, and you'll lose a lot of games to it. So Defender of Argus is absurd in that matchup in general because you get the 2 taunts. It also helps with racing because you get taunts, but you also get the buffs in HP to go past explosives, and in terms of attack, just to kind of race a bit harder. So Defender, probably the MVP of the deck in terms of later on. He does a surprising amount of work compared to a lot of the other 4-drops. Even Implosion, which is astonishingly good Defender, is on par with. And you need 2 guys on the board to make him work. So Defender is really, really good in the current metagame. So, yeah, one of the best cards in the deck. Speaking of one of the best cards in the deck, Doomguard. He's not really the finisher of the deck like he used to be, because you can go higher curve than Doomguard now. However, he still does a job, and he hits very hard. He's one of the best ways of racing aggro decks. Very hard to deal with for Druids especially. He will brute force a Sludge Belcher and keep going. So Doomguard is an insanely good card overall. The drawback is a bit annoying in this deck because you are running Boom and Loatheb. However, it's worth it. He's a very, very good card. He's so good actually that I put Void, is it Void Caller? Yeah, Void Caller in this deck briefly. Didn't really work, so I removed it. But just the fact that I did that just to try and get Doomguards onto the board without discarding is just absurd, because Doomguard is really insane. Also, one of your only ways of dealing 5 from hand, and I'm pretty sure it's the only way of dealing burst damage if you don't have something on the board. Yeah, I think it is. So, it's pretty essential. Loatheb. Now, this is one of the 2 upper curve cards that not every Zoo deck plays because they're slow. So, Loatheb has 2 main uses. The first is stopping control decks and mid-range decks from wiping your board before you kill them. The other main use is to beat freeze mages. I've run into an insane amount of freeze mages recently, and it really is, it's at the stage of when I play Loatheb I win, and when I don't draw it I lose. But then you also have Kezan, which doesn't guarantee a win again in that matchup, however it does help. So Loatheb and Kezan are very critical against freeze mage, and as a result you actually get a lot of wins which you're not normally entitled to. When I got to rank 4 for the first time with this deck, I did lose to 6 freeze mages in a row. That's partly because I didn't draw Loatheb in every single game. But after I added Kezan in, it was still... After I added Kezan in, it went from a 60-40 matchup in his favor to a 60-40 matchup in my favor. So the Kezan and the Loatheb really do come into their own for freeze mage. Now the last card in the deck is Dr. Boom. Now Dr. Boom basically has exactly the same function in this deck as he does in Zoo, as opposed to what he does in some mid-rangey decks. He's not supposed to be a value card, he's supposed to be a, hey, I need a bit of extra punch to finish this game out. Let's just get some boom bots, and may the RNG be with you. The best thing is when they don't have Big Game Hunter and you wreck them. Because Big Game Hunter is very bad against this deck in general, and sometimes you don't draw Dr. Boom, or you discard it with Doomguard, and the BGHs are dead in their hand. And if they BGH your Dr. Boom, you still have the Boom Bots, which is actually more relevant in this deck than in others, because you're an aggro deck, and they're on the board for your buffs like Direwolf Alpha. So Dr. Boom, very, very good as a game ender in this particular deck. Definitely prefer him over something like Ragnaros, for example. Now, because I've actually been tracking my games since I did the last deck tech, I do have some matchup stats for once, which is nice. If I can find them, that is. Alright, so at the moment I'm at rank 3 with this deck, kind of hoping to see if I can go for Legend with this particular build, although the next wing will probably come out before I do that. But anyway, so the deck's been going 60-40. The only bad matchups have really been, I mean, Priest is 50-50, but I've only played 6 games against Priest, so it's a pretty small sample size. The only deck that's been atrocious for me has been Paladin. I currently have a 20% win rate against Paladin with this deck. It's really atrocious. It's the only bad matchup that I've come across that's unwinnable, basically. I mean, it's not unwinnable. I did win 1 game against Paladin, but it's pretty bad. Even Face Hunter was at first a really bad matchup, but then I have Iron Beak Owl, Kezan, Defenders. These are all insane against that deck, to the point when it's actually got into my favor now, since I added Iron Beak Owl in and Kezan. Well, when I added Kezan in, it went to about 50-50, and when I added Iron Beak Owl, it's actually in my favor now, so you can definitely tech for Face Hunter as Zoo, and I would highly recommend you do it, because Face Hunter is everywhere right now. However, what I have been coming across the most has actually been Mage. Mage has been everywhere at the moment, and it's kind of astonishing just how many mages there are. So with this particular deck, I've played 107 games, so I think that's a decent sample size to just kind of show what the metagame is composed of right now. And I've played against exactly the same amount of mages and hunters, and that's about half the field. I wasn't exaggerating when I said that earlier. It's about half the field, and you really should be using Kezan in the current metagame, because it's absurdly good in about half of the games you'll be playing. Now, the least popular class I played against was actually Rogue. I don't know what happened to Rogue, it's kind of disappeared, and Shaman, although I'm expecting Shaman to come back at the end of this week when they get their big lava elemental thing. Is that the end of this week? What wing are we on? I think it might be the end of next week, actually. Yeah, I think it is. So anyway, yeah, Shaman will come back when they get their Fireguard Destroyer, but those 2 classes have just been dropping off a lot recently. The majority of the metagame, from what I can tell, and that's what I've been playing against, has been Warlock, Hunter, Mage, with Warlock being the less popular of the 3, but still around a lot, and that's one of the reasons I'm running a higher curve, is because it beats the other Zoo decks. So anyway, I'll be doing a gameplay video for this at some point, probably later today, and also a write-up, which, when that's finished, I'll link it in the description, and you can go over and read that if you want to. But anyway, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback, want to ask some stuff about the deck, put it in the comment section below. Baz Analysis from Jotto, signing off.